Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here. In today's video, we're not going to be discussing why every single writer at Kotaku has been hovering over Twitter for the last 36 hours, fishing for sympathy points for a job that they lost, even though none of them have actually lost their job. None of you have lost your job. But that is not the purpose of today's video. Today, we're going to be discussing something entirely different. And you might as well strap in, because I know that there are people that are going to take offense to what I'm saying here in this video. They're going to take this personally, but I don't want you to take it personally. I want you to understand what's going on in the gaming industry. I'm going to try to break down some very common arguments. Two in particular. There's two arguments I want to take on tonight, and I'm going to show you exactly why these two very popularized arguments that just get accepted across the board, why these two arguments are very seriously flawed and don't hold water in any way, shape, or form. The first thing I want to discuss, it's a comment that was given to me by quite a few people. Most of you would disagree with what I'm saying, but there were quite a few people who brought up an argument similar to this after the comments in my last video on this topic that I put out last week. And I've also seen this sort of comment in various other comment sections from YouTube videos or on Reddit or on Twitter or wherever. I've seen this all over the place. And that is, okay, in regards to a game like Fallout 76, you see this argument. Well, I'm going to buy the microtransactions. I'm going to support them financially. I'm going to buy into the subscription service. And the reason why is because, yes, I will acknowledge that the game is not in the best shape that it could be in. And I want the game to improve. I want the game to get better. This is what you hear. And the argument goes, okay, so if I want the game to get better and it's not where I'm at now, obviously that's going to require some more development time. And so because the company's going to have to pay for the development, that costs money. And I need this game to show the people that own the IP that it's worth the money and that it's being profitable. So I have to keep funneling money into it to fund the project. Otherwise, they'll shut the project down. I won't be able to get any more content. And so it's up to me to fund the development of the next bit of content. If I don't fund the content, I won't get the content. Now let me explain to you. On the surface, some of this might make sense. Yes, development does have costs, and the longer development time goes, the more salary you got to pay the employees. Obviously, costs are going to increase exponentially. That's clear, that's obvious. I'm not going to disagree with that. However, let me ask you this, and we're going to do a really simple exercise so I can prove my point. It's going to, hopefully this will be so obvious to you after I explain this in this manner that maybe some people will be like, oh wow, I have never thought of it that way, but it's really quite simple. Look around, if you're in your house, look around the room you're in. Look at all of the products in your house. If you're in your car, you got maybe a jacket or a sweatshirt, whatever, laying around. Maybe you got some stuff in the back seat, just whatever you got lying around. If you're at work, you got something at your desk or whatever. Any product that you own that is a mass-produced consumer product, which is most of the stuff you'll own. Sure, some of you might have specially commissioned a painting from a local artisan, or you might have had a carpenter build a gazebo back in the back of your house. That's not a mass-produced product. That's something that's bespoke. That's something you had custom-made just for you. That's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about any consumer product you own. Now, how many of those products have you, as a customer, been asked to fund the research, the development, and the manufacturing for that product before it even existed? The answer is none, aside from what you might find where your video games are sitting. The fact is, there is not any product in your home that you went to a store and bought off the shelf that you, as the customer, were expected to foot the cost for to develop that product. Not a single one. And this, you might say, well, video games are art, therefore, What about books? Do book publishers expect you to pay for a book and say, hey, we have an author under contract and he's going to write a book for us. Why don't you just pay us for the book now, and then after he writes it, then you can buy it again? No. You don't fund the author. The people publishing the book do. You want to know why? Because they invest, they take the risk in order to produce a product, and then it's up to them to sell it. It's up to them to create a product worth buying. And that's an artistic endeavor. You would laugh at the thought if someone asked you, what if Hollywood came knocking and said, hey, you guys like that last Avengers movie? Well, if you want to see the next one, we're going to need money from all of you ahead of time. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to make it. Yes, of course, we made $1 billion on the last one, but, you know, these things cost money, and we're going to need you guys to fund it ahead of time. No. That's not how it works. And that is not how it works with any product you buy. Did you pay Sony to do research and development for your television? No. That has to come out of their pockets. Now, obviously, companies that have been established for a while, they will have proceeds from their earlier project that they made money on. And they dip into that. So yes, in a way, eventually, yes, you are helping to fund that stuff. But people who are trying to go under the false assumption that they have to help develop these games by paying for them ahead of time, no, that's what investors do. And you might say, well, I am an investor. I'm investing in the future of the game. No. Investors are people who, if this product is successful, they're going to recoup money. You're not recouping money. You're the end user. You're the customer. You're the consumer. You're not an investor in their product. And it is not your responsibility to foot the bill for research and development for a multi-billion-dollar company that has been in business. Some of these companies, 20, 30 years, been in business. And like I said, revenue, multiple billions of dollars flowing through their doors at some time. It is not in any way, shape, or form your responsibility to foot their manufacturing costs, their development costs. No. Their previous products pay for that. You do not have to foot that bill, and it is absurd to think so. And again, I will challenge you. Please, if you can come up with a single solitary consumer item that is in your house that you were asked to foot the bill for ahead of time, please let me know down in the comments. Because I can't think of a single one aside from video games where they get away with this. Because the problem is, through the gaming journalists and the gaming media, which the publishers have had in their back pocket since the late 80s, we have been brainwashed as consumers. And yes, that's the word. I know people don't like to admit it or don't like to hear that term. I haven't been brainwashed. Yes, you have. The gaming industry has made you think, because they've been hammering you over the head with this nonsense for years, and you've bought into it, especially over the last decade we've seen this. They've been hammering us in the head, and enough people have bought into it that is legitimately, you have been brainwashed if you think that it's your responsibility to keep these companies afloat. It's not. They are a business. It is their job to create products that are worth buying and not broken. Stuff that is worth selling, that people actually want to buy, and not just a hardcore dedicated fan base that will just throw money at it. It's their job to reach out to customers. It is not your job to keep them afloat. Please, please try to keep this in mind. And if only even one person hears what I said and thinks about that in a different sort of way, then that the purpose of the video is fulfilled as far as that goes. But now we're going to move on to argument number 2. And the next argument, this one here that we're going to discuss, this is the one where I think people are going to get the most upset about, and that's totally fine. I get it. If you take personal offense to this, okay. But I ask you, just hear me out. Because the argument I want to discuss is extremely common. And it especially comes when you're coming from someone who is a defender of a live service game, especially one that is deemed to be a failure by both critics and users for the most part. We're talking about games like, say, Sea of Thieves or Anthem or Fallout 76 in this case. Games that did not do well critically at all and have kind of become punching bags over the years. Whether or not these games get better over time, not really the point for the purpose of this argument. But what I want to discuss is when it comes to the monetization, and especially we saw this with a prime example last week with all the Fallout First nonsense, and I'm not going to try to rehash that, but I want to discuss the argument when people say, why do you care how I spend my money? Why can't you just leave us alone? We're having fun. This doesn't affect you. And that's what I want to discuss. The this doesn't affect you argument. And the question of why do you guys care how I spend my money? And a lot of times the people who use this argument, they try to seek refuge in, Well, anyone complain. These people are just miserable people who just want to hate. They don't want anyone to have fun, and they get all uptight. Why do you care why I spend my money? Well, let me explain this to you. Because the simple fact is, no one actually cares how you spend your money. No one actually cares if you're having fun or enjoying something. Nobody cares about that. You try to twist the argument to make it seem that that is what people are complaining about. People aren't complaining about how you spend your money. If you went out and bought a brand new car, and on top of the base price of the car, you decide to put in a bunch of customization. You got new rims for the tire. You put a spoiler on the back. You got custom headlights. You redid the interior. You put in a new sound system, whatever. You spent a bunch of extra money on top of the base cost of the car. And you put up your pictures on Instagram or wherever. People wouldn't be like, oh man, you idiot, why did you spend all that money? Now, maybe your significant other might be upset if you wasted all the money in your bank account, but the public wouldn't come after you and attack you for spending your money on that. If that's what you want to do, if that's how you want to spend your money, people wouldn't care. The reason why is because the purchasing of all that customization for your car, that doesn't affect anyone else in any way, shape, or form. But the money you spend when it comes to microtransactions and buying subscriptions, that does affect everyone else. Because every little point of analytics that you are using to contribute, to pay into this, all of this stuff that gets thrown into the earnings report for these corporations. We just heard a lot of news about the corporate earnings report for EA and Ubisoft over the last week or so. All of this stuff, every time you spend money in these stores, this goes into a database, and they use those analytics, and they show that to the investors and say, see, this is where the money needs to go. Oh, look, our live service money, our revenue's up 50% for live service revenue. And you guys keep funneling money into these companies. And so their investors, the people that you guys will decry and be like, it's not the developer's fault, it's the investors that are forcing them to do it. You are forcing the investors to force the developers to do this because you are showing the investors in these companies that there's money to be made off of you. And every time you spend money on these microtransactions, no matter what it is, whether it be loot boxes or subscription fees or just buying cosmetic skins, it doesn't matter. Every single time you put in your credit card number and spend more money, it affects the marketplace for not only current games that are on the market, but games that are in development, and you're further poisoning the well for games down the line. So when you try to sit there and say, this doesn't affect you, it absolutely does affect me. And it affects every gamer. So when you want to sit there and pretend like it's just you, I'm just having fun, I'm just enjoying myself. Why do you guys care why I'm enjoying myself? It's because while you're enjoying yourself, you might not understand this. It's you're being selfish. You can say what you want about, but gamers are so entitled. It is the height of selfishness to do stuff that you know is infuriating the majority of people just for your own benefit. Let me give you an analogy. Many years ago, in the U.S., which is, I'm an American if you can't tell from my accent, you could walk into any restaurant in the country, any bar in the country, and light up a cigarette and smoke to your heart's content, and no one would say a word to you. And over time, people realize, oh, smoking is not exactly the healthiest thing, and there's such a thing as secondhand smoke, and some people who don't even care about the health benefits, well, maybe they just don't want smoke being blown in their face while they're trying to eat their dinner. So over time, what happened? Well, smoking sort of started going out of vogue, and you saw non-smoking sections start opening up in restaurants for people who didn't want that intrusion into their leisure time, into their restaurant-going experience. They didn't want it. And over time, those non-smoking sections expanded because more and more people stopped smoking. More and more people saw the harm in it and saw the harm that it was causing to people who didn't even partake in smoking via secondhand smoke, because the rooms would still fill up with smoke. So what happened over time? Well, eventually, restaurants just outright stopped having smoking sections. Whether that be through their own volition or whether the government came in, sometimes the city would come in or the state would come in and just say, okay, a ban on smoking, a blanket ban on smoking in public buildings. You can't, any public place, restaurant, doesn't matter. No smoking allowed. And that became the law of the land. Now, I'm sure there's still places in the country where you can go in and have a cigarette and no one's going to say boo. I'm sure that's the case. But, for example, you're not going to walk into any chain restaurant and be allowed to smoke because people saw that just because you're not a smoker, it was affecting everyone because the smoke would get everywhere and infect everything. And it's the same with microtransactions and these loot boxes and the subscription services that people, well, I really like the game, so I just want to support the devs. You are not helping anyone. And I'm going to get back to that in just a second. But the point of this is, the microtransactions that you're buying are only leading to further problems down the road. You're only further poisoning the well. For years, what do we hear? Oh, it's not the big deal. It's not the big deal. It's not the big deal. And now, look what it is. Look at what the market was a decade ago. And look at where it is now. We had online gaming, guys. We had online gaming early in the 2000s. It took a long time to get to the point where every single game was monetized. Games were running on servers. Games were up with multiplayer functionality for years before they started gouging our pockets. And now it's like, oh, we have to help maintain server costs. No, you don't. That is not your responsibility. You don't have to worry about the infrastructure of a multi-billion-dollar company. Bethesda's fine. EA is fine. Ubisoft's fine. You don't have to make excuses and apologize for them and start getting, oh, what about the poor servers? How will the poor dears pay for their servers? Oh, I don't know, maybe the billions of dollars they've made off their last few games could help foot the bill. Anyway, that's it for me, Coach Toolshed. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Please subscribe. If you want to stay in tune with the channel, head forward, and as always, keep it turned to 11.